are going to talk about a Supreme Court case involving the issue of abortion. Right now, the Supreme Court is hearing a case challenging the legality of a Massachusetts law that imposes a 35-foot buffer zone between protesters and abortion clinics. Now, the reason why Massachusetts passed this type of law is to protect women who are seeking an abortion. Of course, some of these protesters can be very intimidating. They can be very harsh and scary for women that are going through a very difficult emotional period in their lives. So I understand the reason for them wanting to pass a law like this, but it is an interesting case because protests are not supposed to be convenient. I don't necessarily agree with the message that these pro-life protesters are trying to send us, but at the same time, I don't want to do anything to hinder or censor protests here in the United States. Again, protests are not supposed to be convenient. Now, what's interesting is, while the Supreme Court is hearing this case, Antonin Scalia, who is notoriously conservative, decided to make the argument that, hey, you know what? These protesters aren't violent and they're not trying to intimidate these women. They're just simply trying to counsel them so they know what they're getting themselves into. Dino Badala, who is a comedian and a political analyst, wrote about this, and he was kind of upset that Antonin Scalia would make such an argument because, well, it's not really true. According to Dino Badala, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia told us that these people were not anti-abortion protesters. Instead, he glowingly described them as counselors who wanted to, quote, confront these pregnant women by speaking to them, quote, quietly in a friendly manner. Well, Dino Badala decided to do his own investigative research on this, and he actually went to an abortion clinic in New Jersey. Now, New Jersey does not have this buffer law. However, he wanted to see what kind of behavior these protesters were engaging in. Here's what he found. Upon parking my car about a block and a half from the clinic, I could hear screaming. I couldn't make out what these words were, but they were being directed at women approaching the clinic by a group of male protesters standing on the doorstep of the clinic. This group of men had formed an angry gauntlet in front of the clinic. They held signs bearing photos of dead babies, biblical verses, and allegations that baby killing was taking place at this facility. They also had signs, and they were also screaming things like, "Be a man, stop your woman from killing your baby, mommy don't kill me, and you are going to be the father of a dead baby." So this is clearly a form of intimidation. And of course, we have conservative lawmakers that are passing legislation that intimidates women when they do get an abortion. They have to look at an ultrasound, for instance. They have to go through a 24-hour waiting period. They have to drive 150 miles in some cases to the nearest abortion clinic. They're making it really difficult for women to do what they are supposed to be able to do under a 1973 Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade. But at the same time, here's the thing, even though I have my own biases, I'm willing to hear the arguments from both sides of this case without putting my biases into my judgment. So I want to protect protesters. At the same time, I want to protect the safety of women who are going to these abortion clinics to get an abortion. I want to look at the facts, and Antonin Scalia, as a Supreme Court justice, should be looking at the facts, not using his own biases to be an activist judge, which he is doing in this particular case. I don't know if he's misinformed or if he's doing this because he wants to push his own agenda. But regardless of that, we need to hold our Supreme Court justices to a much higher standard.